This is the Tay, one of Scotland's most famous rivers. A strange place to begin the story of one of Scottish football's all-time greats. But if things had turned out differently one summer day here in 1956, we might never have been able to tell the story of maybe the greatest Ranger of all. So what happened that day nearly 40 years ago, John?
Well, I was spending 2 weeks holidays up in Guy's house over here camping with a boys' club from Edinburgh. I came down with a bunch of the lads, and I was never a great swimmer, and I swam halfway across and realised I forgot to take my towel. And I thought I'd better go back and get it because we were going to do a bit of sunbathing. And I came back across and I got to about 2 yards from the edge of the bank here. But unknown to me, there was a lot of currents in this water and there was a whirlpool. And I ended up going right down this whirlpool, and it's quite deep, it goes down about 20 feet in some parts. And I just started going up and down like a yo-yo. I didn't realise how many times I'd gone up and down, but what made it harder was there was a little kid about 12 years of age sitting on the bank here watching me going up and down. And every time I tried to shout to him for help, my mouth kept filling up with water, and eventually I just gave up all hope. I'd been fighting along, saying, I'm going to be a football player, this can't happen to me. And it just became as if I was totally exhausted, and I just wanted to go to sleep. And I just closed my eyes. And the next thing I remember, I was on the bank here. There was 2 or 3 people around about me, and the water started gushing out my mouth. But I didn't realise till a number of years later that it had taken them nearly 15 to 20 minutes to get me to regain consciousness. And apparently the club leader was telling me just a few years ago that they were just a way to put a blanket over the top of me because they thought I'd gone. But it was only because of Peter Masterson, one of the older lads in the club. He wouldn't give it up and he kept pumping away at my body. And I really got him to thank for it. I'm still here now.
Winning that terrifying fight for life as a 14-year-old was certainly John Greig's most important victory. But there were to be many more as he went on to become one of the most successful and best-loved characters ever to grace Scottish football. Greig's early years, however, were no different from a million other football-crazy youngsters. Well, John, this is where it all began for you, Clareburn Crescent in Prestonfield, with Arthur's Seat just at the end of the road.
I spent the first 25 years of my life here, Dougie, Clareburn Crescent. I haven't been back for quite a while, but standing here today brings back a lot of great memories, particularly from my childhood days.
Playing football on the street, I suppose.
Football on the street, yeah, with a tennis ball. Just here between the 2 tenement buildings was my Ibrox in those days. And I scored some goals that McCoysh would be proud of, or any striker in the world for that matter.
And in fact, you lived here for, what, 25 years? You were captain of Rangers and you were still living at home with your mum and dad.
I was captain of Rangers, captain of Scotland, and still living with mum and dad, but I think you've got to remember in those days we didn't get paid the kind of money they get nowadays, and you couldn't really afford to buy a flat, or you didn't really move until you got married.
So who was the influence on you, John? I mean, was your dad a football player? Or
no, my dad didn't know anything about football at all. Basically, it all stemmed from my next oldest brother to me, Tom, or Tam as I used to call him, and he'd reached the standard of junior football, which was very good in those days. He brought a ball home from his amateur team or something. It was the old-fashioned ball with the lace and everything. And we had what I termed a lobby in there with a linoleum down. And I used to kick the ball back and forward with my right foot, so he took my right shoe off and my right sock off and left my left one on. And basically this was because when this big hard ball came, if I kicked it with my bare foot, it would sting and hurt you. So I started kicking it with my left foot. So really what he was trying to make me a two-footed football player. And by the time I was 6 or 7 years of age, I could kick the ball as well with both feet.
I mean, you could play in the street in those days, obviously, because there wouldn't be cars about, but the back green as well. Let's go through and have a look and see this back green, see whether it's still there. I suppose the other thing that's surprising as well, John, is that you weren't exactly the biggest boy in the street at that time, were you?
I was always the smallest. I was always very small for my age, and I was very, very frail. And I was a ball player in those days. I was a ball player.
Don't believe that.
Manipulated the ball about. And no, it wasn't until I was about 17 that I really started growing. But I used to come in here with my tennis ball, particularly when it was raining, and I'd pick it out of my pocket and start keeping it up against the wall there. But the thudding of the wall got on the woman's nerves. So after a while she would come out and chase me. So she would think I was away, but I would just turn around and start doing that one. And then when that woman came out, that was me finished for the day. So I had to go and find somewhere else. But I spent hours in here with these two walls. Obviously they've painted them now, but then I used to spend a lot of time through the back here in the back green, which has completely changed from my days. God, this place has changed.
It's not a bad football pitch now, is
Well,
it?
it looks a great football pitch now, but none of these fences and that were there in my day. I mean, and the grass was a lot longer and everything.
So when did you first realise that you actually had talent, that you were better than all the other kids?
Probably out in the street there, or maybe down in the park, because invariably it was the guy that had the ball that would want to pick the teams. And then if he picked me first, then the other guy would pick two players.
So you were worth two of
So
the rest?
I used to think to myself, well, that's because I'm maybe probably better than them, but that's how it all started.
Just 100 yards from the house John shared with his 5 brothers and sisters, all older incidentally, was a huge grassy area where all the local youngsters played. It was where the young Greig saw organised football for the first time. If this hasn't changed, you were lucky. This is a smashing football pitch, isn't it?
It looks fabulous now, Dougie. It has changed a bit. Well, I'm delighted to see they've done something for the kids. They've got a lovely playground there for the kids, but all this wasn't here. As you can see, it's not too broad. This was the football pitch. And they played from that end there, right down to the bottom down here. And it was jackets for goalposts. And this was basically the first football I saw when I was a kid. And they used to play about 17, 18, 19 a side. And the street book in those days used to come down, and they were illegal. So they had to watch for policemen and that. But they would come down here and take 2 shillings a head off the guys. So as that the winning team at the end of 3 or 4 hours would get 4 bob instead of their 2 shillings. One of the fascinating stories which I remember, I was about 6 years of age, and there was a guy come down, a wee guy, who older people remember. It was wee Jockey Robertson that played for Lanark, who are now defunct. And wee Jockey was a junior player in those days for Armadale Thistle. And I remember down at that end one day, and I was about 6 years of age, he says to me, when the ball was away down here, because it took a long time for the ball to go from there up to here, and he says to me one day, he says, right, I'll give you a shilling, which is 5 pence nowadays, if you can score a penalty kick against me. And I was trying to kick the ball by him, and he would dive over the top of it and give me a shilling. And I thought I was a millionaire with a shilling in my hand at 6 years of age. And then later on in life, he signed for Lanark, and then a few years later I signed for Rangers. And I played against him in a league match at Ibrox one day, and that was the days when Lanark had the Hilly Harley grade, a really good side.
Yep.
And Jimmy Miller headed the ball into the goals, and wee Jockey went scrambling on the line and saved it. And I ran in and took wee Jockey and the ball into the net. And the referee gave a goal, and I was on my way back to the halfway line. And this guy's tugging at my arm. He says, "Do you think I used to give you a bloody shilling for scoring a goal down the park?" He says, "And now you're kicking me into this net." It brought back memories for here. But we used to spend hours here, hours and hours and hours down here.
Young John's entire world lay no more than a decent free kick from his own front door. Just across the road from the park was his primary school, remarkably unchanged by the passage of time. So were you clever at school, John?
Actually, at this school I was. I think at the end of the day, Dougie, I finished up either top boy or second top boy. And in those days, your qualifications basically pointed you in the direction of which secondary school you go to. And I had the qualifications to go to Boroughmuir, which was a senior secondary school, which meant you could be there till you were 17 or 18-year-old. But the big problem was that Boroughmuir didn't have a football team. So I didn't tell my father, and I got my mother to sign the form to let me go to the local junior secondary school. And to the day he died, my father never knew about that. So I really gave up my education for football when I left here all these years ago.
I suppose your first organised football must have been here at primary school.
Well, basically, I started doing that at playground. Like all the rest of the kids, I used to kick the ball about at playtime and lunch hour and things. And obviously, one of the teachers, the head teacher, must have watched me playing out there. And he summoned me into the classroom, which I thought I was going to get a rollicking for something. And he said, look, I've been watching you playing there, son. He says, I want you to play in the school team. Well, I was too young, really. I was only 9 years of age. And it just so happened that the game was a cup final for the Edinburgh schools. And I says, well, I can't play. He says, why not? I says, I don't have any football boots. So he actually turned round and this cupboard, this actual cupboard, he opened it up and he had about a couple of dozen old football boots, pairs of football boots, and he blew the dust off them. And I tried them on. I went home and my brother says to me, what are you doing? I says, I have to play football for the school team. So he says, well, you're not playing with boots like that. So he cleaned them, and I probably had the cleanest boots in Scotland at the time. But you know, there's something I always remembered about that, Dougie. To this day, I've never ever gave it a thought. But that was the cup final. The poor kid that had played in all the rest of the games, he must have grown up the rest of his life hating me. But we won the cup, and we got our pictures taken out in the quadrangle there, and I've still got the medal and the photograph to this day.
Young John Greig had his first medal, and there were plenty more to come for the wee fellow smiling shyly in the back row. He wasn't much bigger when he was picked as a 14-year-old for the Edinburgh schools team. His talent for the game was obvious, and the tricky little inside forward was usually singled out for special treatment.
And I used to get kicked about stupid, because I was so small for my age. I mean, I was only, when I was 15, I was only about 5'3", 5'4". It was actually my height that stopped me getting into the Scottish schoolboy under-15 team.
I played against him for Glasgow schoolboys against Edinburgh schoolboys, and it was just, honestly, it was about that height. At 15, it was under 15 game, I was about 5'9", and John was about 5 foot, inside right, and he says I bullied him during the game. I can't think that, could you? Bully John Greig.
Away from school, John starred for Crossroads Boys Club and for Edina Hearts, the nursery club for Heart of Midlothian, the team he supported as a boy. His heart was set on a career at Tynecastle until that fateful Sunday morning when Bob Macaulay, a Rangers scout, arrived at the Greg's door.
So Bob gave the spiel about Rangers Football Club in many ways that I would do nowadays. Tell him all about them. And I'm looking at him. I'm thinking to myself, what's all this about? So eventually, after a while, he went to his pocket and pulled out this form and says, right, son, just sign there. I says, what for? He says, sign for Rangers. I said, I don't want to sign for Rangers. I'm a Heart supporter. My father, with the Sunday Post, just moved it 2 inches like that and says, sign that form. Put the paper back in front of his face. My father's telling me to do it. I had no option. So I signed it. And old Bob says to me, you'll not regret that. Thanks very much, Mr. Greig. Nice to see you all. And away he went. He shut the door and I burst out crying. And I says to my brother Tam, I says, I'll never forgive you for that. He says, don't be so stupid. He says, Rangers are a great club. He says, away you go out and play. So I went down the stair and I went with one of my mates and I says, I've just signed for Rangers. He says, for Rangers? My dad told me to sign, so I've signed. So I says, look, they're playing at Easter Road next Saturday in the League Cup. Do you fancy going? Well, I hated Easter Road. Rangers beat Hibs 6-1 in the League Cup. Jimmy Miller scored 3, Ralphie Brand scored 3. And I was standing with the Rangers supporters, and I turned to my pal and I says to him, well, I'll tell you one thing. This is some team I've signed for, is it no? And from that day onwards, that was me.
And so, in 1958, at the age of 16, John Greig arrived at Ibrox for the first time.
I remember John coming to Rangers. We were training over in the Albion dog track over across the road there. And
we seen this new boy coming from Edinburgh along with Miller and Brandymack, and we looked at him, and there was a wee skinny boy, you know, and I was saying, look at the size of him. I said, surely he's not a player.
John, at the 17-year-old, we were about 5'6", and about the end of the year, see, about 6 months, he grew to about 5'10", 5'11", in the space of 6 months. Unbelievable. And John, as a wee boy, 17-year-old, would be the first on the track and lead everybody at the training.
Ian McMillan was a little gentleman, the wee Prime Minister, great player, great player. But we used to run around the park, and the boss, Scott Simon, used to come down the tunnel with his hat on and his overcoat, and Ian used to shout to the guys in front, don't go any quicker, but make your arms go. He says, and they'll think, if you move your arms, the boss will think you're going quicker. This is because Ian couldn't keep up, you know. So we're all bursting at the gut to try and impress the manager, but we can't, because we're going to leave a big gap between Maxi Murray and Ian McMillan.
This, of course, was the era when managers wore soft hats rather than tracksuits, and Scott Simon was impressed enough with young Greig to quickly offer him that much-coveted full-time contract.
So about 6 months later, Scott Simon came up to me on a Friday and he says to me, go and look at the notice board. The notice board's over there. That is probably the most important thing in this dressing room, because when the team sheet goes up there and your name's not on the team sheet, that's when you've got a problem. The manager's got a problem when the team sheet goes up there and a so-called superstar doesn't go off his backside for over there and go and look at it because he takes it for granted he's on it. So I came along and looked at it, and I'm on the first team sheet to play Airdrie in a League Cup match out here. And Jimmy Baxter says to me about 20-3, come on, son. Not that he was that much older than me, but he put a broom down the floor there and says, right, just think that's a net. And we played imaginary tennis with the ball. And I went out there against Airdrie. It took me a bit longer than I thought, mind you. I think I scored in about 10 minutes.
A goal on his debut and a 4-1 win for Rangers that day in September 1961. Over the next year or so, Greig continued to impress without quite becoming a first-team regular. His Old Firm debut came in unexpected fashion on New Year's Day 1963.
Baxter. 8 minutes gone. Brand. And Kennedy gives away the first corner. Davis has it. And it's a goal, yes. Right half Davis. Greig. Scott. Brand, and McNeil didn't get that Lewis puts it in, and corner for Rangers. Baxter's with them and gets it to Greig. Baxter. Funny how they seem to be great wide open spaces. Brand running into one. Oh no, his ball was just too far ahead of him, and Happy came out very bravely. Brogan. As I said already, he's Celtic's most dangerous forward. Baxter takes it. Baxter. Ferren coming over. Stott. Ferren still coming on. Baxter to Wilson. He's outside left. Bren. And it must be, yes, it is.
And I was still playing in the reserves at that time and only playing occasionally in the first team. I was watching my wife Jeanette at the time, and she says to me, if you're not playing, why don't you come down to Bo'ness for Hogmanay? I says, well, there's no harm in that. I says, because I'm injured. So I went down and I had half-pint shandies till about 4 o'clock in the morning at this party. And I got a lift up to Linlithgow and got a train through to Glasgow, and I was sitting in the hall at the foot of the marble staircase. And Scott Simon came down the stairs and he came to me and he says, Happy New Year, John, you're wearing the number 8 jersey today. I says, boss, I'm injured. And it wasn't as if I was a regular in the team at the time. He says, I know. He says, but Ian McMillan can't play in that surface, Johnny. He says, I'm sure you'll be all right. So I waited till he got to the end of the line. And I got up and I ran along here to that dressing room toilet there, and I spent about 3/4 an hour in that toilet.
Here's Greig coming in. On to Brand. Greig again. It's a goal. And that makes it 3. Inside forward, Greig has made it Rangers 3, Celtic 0. Celtic backpedaling for all their worth. Davis coming right in. And Miller will start. There's a chance for Wilson, and it's goal!
But that learnt me a lesson. Never again in my career, irrespective of whether it was a cup final, a league match, a friendly match, a game on tour, I never did anything, and I certainly didn't have anything to drink on a Friday or a night before a match. Never.
It had been an Old Firm debut to remember, but it had been during the close-season tour of Russia 6 months previously that Greig had really established himself as a member of the first-team squad.
We played in Moscow, and we played in Tbilisi, and we played in Kiev, and I don't think he missed any of the games. And it was 90-odd degrees or more. And, you know, he stamped himself really as a player. He did stamp himself as a player then, and he never ever looked back after that.
He took Jimmy back to his place. He was in the national service, and Greggy started over there, I think. That was him, and he played wing half over there. And we come away with 2 victories in a draw over in Russia, and which was tremendous for us at the time, you know. So that's how John started. But see, John played at right back, he played at left back, played right half, left half, played inside right. He played inside right. I remember seeing him scoring goals at inside right, taking wee McMillan's place, you know. So he was a very versatile player.
He played in Baxter's position in the 3 games that we played in Russia, and he was outstanding. Even at his young age, there's no doubt that, good as Jim Baxter was, he was never missed on that tour.
As the season wore on, though, Greig and Baxter were important members of the team which reached the Scottish Cup final against Celtic.
Baxter, an uncanny sense of where the ball's coming. To Greig, his right half. McLean. Inside forward, McLean. And again, Happy had to be good. Well, he was lucky to get that one back again. Brand, Miller. To Henderson, and all the Celtic defence in the wrong place. And Brand scores! Well, if you can't see that goal, it's because we've got nothing but Rangers supporters standing here. To Divers. Mackay clearing. Murdoch coming through, and here's Hughes. Hughes should score. No, but Murdoch does. Wilson. On to Miller. Miller to Henderson. Henderson. And that's Wilson who put it over the bar. Here's Shearer. On to Baxter. Wilson. And McNeil's a hero with Henderson coming in with Brogan. Over it goes. And it's Mackay who gets it away. And then Murdoch. And what a finish to this cup final. And it's a goal kick.
I can remember my first final. The interesting thing about that was it was the first time Rangers and Celtic had played against each other in a cup final for 35 years. We had a great side. When you think about it, we had Jimmy Miller, Ralphie Brandon, Davy Wilson in our forward line. And between them, they scored 561 goals for Rangers. And that's a hell of a lot of goals. And from my point of view as a defender, it was very comforting to know that every time the ball went up the park, you probably score, or you had a good chance of scoring. But on the other side of the park, we had wee Willie Henderson, who was a really good player. Wee Willie was so direct. 9 times out of 10, if he was in a 1-for-1 situation with a full-back, he would beat him, and he would go straight for the byline. And his final ball was always of the highest quality, and that's why we scored so many goals. And to make up that forward line at that particular time, George McLean, who we just bought from St Mirren, was drafted in, and he was settling into the team. I'll never forget one of his first games. He walked into the dressing room and we were losing. It was at Ibrox and we were losing, and Jimmy Baxter says to him at half-time, "That's the worst display inside forward I've ever seen in my life." And he just turned around and he says, "Well, you better get used to it, because there's plenty more where that came from." And Scott Simon nearly dropped his cup and saucer.
If the 1963 final had been close first time round, there was never any doubt who would win the replay. Rangers totally dominated in front of another massive attendance.
Crowd of approaching 130,000 here at Hampden. The atmosphere just right for an exciting, tense cup final match. Touch on to Miller. Miller, pass to Henderson.
Brand scores.
Baxter will take this free kick. McNamee heads it away. Here's Miller. Left foot drive. It cannons off the post. Divers. Rolling it towards Greig. Baxter. Wilson. Miller. Double pass from Miller to Wilson. Miller. Brand, a shot on the crown of the ball into the net. An incredible goal by Ralph Brand.
We really set about Celtic that night and we ended up winning 3-0. We could have scored a lot more goals. But I'll always remember that night because it was my first Scottish Cup winners' medal. And I ended up at the end of the game as if I'd been 15 rounds with Mike Tyson or Nigel Benn or somebody, because John McNamee, Celtic player, accidentally, just over there, he kicked me right in the face. And he smashed all my teeth and my nose and everything. Mind you, he shoots on the state of his foot. After the match, for all the after-match photographs and everything, all this cotton wool stuck up my nose to stop the bleeding and everything. So I was a proud winner of a medal, but I was in a sorry state.
The Rangers team of that era was one of the club's finest ever. The 63 Cup winning team still rolls off the tongue of many older supporters. Richie, Shearer, Provan, Greg McKinnon, Baxter, Henderson, McMillan, Miller, Brandon, Wilson.
The team spirit was tremendous. And that's what I mean, you go into a park, you see yourself, I've got to win, eh? But you want 11 guys going out playing for 11 guys. You've got 11 guys to gel and fight for each other. That's what it's all about.
John always fitted in. I mean, don't get me wrong. See, people get this idea that people have got to be flashy players and prima donnas and what have you, but I feel that a team is the great teams were never made up of 11 prima donnas. The great teams are made up of 4 or 5 what I used to term as labourers. The guys are workhorses. They were in the engine room. John could play the game, never mind just defend. Simon was a great believer in those days that defenders shouldn't have got up the forward line. They should stay in defence. But no, John was the type of player that could break up. It's proved it with the goals he scored.
Greig had made his European debut 2 seasons previously in Belgium. But in September 1963, and only his 4th European appearance, one of the greatest teams the world has ever seen, the mighty Real Madrid, came to Ibrox for a European Cup tie. Rangers matched the Spanish Maestros for 87 minutes.
Baxter, this elegant footballer. It 1-2. Greig, there's Di Stefano after him. Still Greig out to Henderson. Corner. That's Greig. To Forrest. McLean going forward quickly. Up to Henderson. A young Forrest again. Oh, a beautiful shot! Young Forrest is doing very well indeed. Wilson with the corner. A goal! Right in the post! Hit the post. Now McLean. Up to Henderson. Forrest. Oh, a bad mistake, and it's Pinto of all people. Baxter recovering well, and then it's Greig getting it away. This is Brand. Into Greig. Young Forrest. And again, Santa Maria.
I love playing in Europe. I played direct opposition to Puskas. Di Stefano was in that team. One of the greatest players I've ever seen. Gento. He could win the 7:30 at Sheffield Dogs. He was that quick.
There's Shearer. And here's Hinto. There's Puskas himself to Hinto. And it's a goal. A lovely goal.
Gento was like lightning. I mean, Bobby Lennox was quick. Gento was quick. But these guys always gave themselves time. Good players always give themselves time, and it was hard to play against them because they were great football brains, apart from their ability.
If Rangers had been a little unlucky to lose 1-0 at Ibrox, they were given a football lesson in the return leg in the Bernabeu Stadium. Real won 6-0.
They kept the ball away from us for about a minute and a half. It was as if it was like they were training, and we couldn't get the ball off them. They got a corner kick, and Puskas went to the right wing to take it with his left foot, and we all thought he's going to take an in-swinging corner kick here. He blasted his ball right over to the junction in the 18-yard box at the other side of the field, and Hento was standing there and hit the ball in the volley, and it hit the junction of the post and the bar, near post. It went straight over his head and landed about the 15th row of the stand. The ball hadn't left the ground, the ball hadn't touched the ground, I beg your pardon, from the corner kick till it's landed in the crowd. I've never seen that in my life before. I'll probably never see it again. Playing against him and playing in some of the finest stadiums in the world. Marvellous experience. And one thing stood out in all that. No matter where I played in the world, I was never alone. Because there was always a Rangers supporter, or in many cases, many Rangers supporters, watching the game.
On the domestic front, those Rangers supporters had plenty to celebrate, with the famous treble-winning season of 1964. It had been a happy new year, too.
Celtic supporters encouraging their team. It's Murdoch. Greig to Baxter. Greig. Through to Miller. Miller. Brand. On to Henderson. Brand. That was a free kick. 18 minutes gone. Henderson taking this free kick. And Brand trying to poke it in. And Miller has scored. Miller has scored after 18 minutes of the second half to make it Rangers 1, Celtic 0.
In the early days, I always felt that I was in the safest part of the ground, being on the pitch. They were always fascinating games, because it didn't matter how well you did in the one previous, the next one was a new challenge. It didn't matter the form of the particular team going into that game, because of the pride and the passion of each set of players. It was always a hard match. So they were always like cup finals.
Well, here are Rangers, led out by Bobby Shearer. There's no run out. I think they may be getting the photographs taken, I'm not sure. No, they're clapping out Celtic. A generous gesture. The whole Rangers team lined up to clap out Celtic after the magnificent victory at Bratislava on Wednesday night.
I played against a number of excellent Celtic players. Billy McNeil, wee Bobby Lennox, who was that quick he could catch pigeons. And of course, wee Jimmy Johnson, obviously one of the best players that's played in Scottish football. If I was playing out beside the jungle the first half, and we're waiting for the game starting, wee Jimmy would shout, "You right today, big man?" And I would say, "Yeah, I'm all right, wee man. But I'll tell you one thing, if you go by me today, keep going. Don't come back. If you come back, you're in trouble." And he says, "Ah, come on, the game's not even started yet, you know." And I used to feel in the early days, in those days anyway, that I should have attached my birth certificate to my shorts, because my parentage was always put in doubt with the jungle at Parkhead. But with some great tussles, some great games.
Proven. Greig gets it away to Wilson. Well, this could build up into a wonderful match. Forrest, beautiful position. On to Brand. Oh, fell, and that was a good save. Baxter, Wilson. Left back Proven. So Wilson likes it. Corner, yes. Wilson taking this corner kick. And it's a goal! And Forrest has scored! Well, it's just the right time to score. Here's right back Young taking this free kick. Well, Rangers have beaten Celtic 4 times already this season. Greig. On to Forrest. Henderson of Rangers. And a goal! A goal by Henderson.
I think the game was possibly played in a much more sporting fashion years ago. I honestly think that players respected each other an awful lot more. And it wasn't them and us all the time. Don't get me wrong, we wanted to beat Rangers, and we knew that they really wanted desperately to beat us as well. But there was an understanding, a relationship about teams, and I felt there was an affinity about Celtic and Rangers players.
But at that time, when you were maybe Scotland, whatever, you always had Greig and Willie Johnson, Big Ronnie McKinnon, Willie Henderson, and the company always got together, and the company was great, and the crack was great. I mean, supporters wouldn't realise how pally these guys were at that time. On the field, it was completely different.
There were more medals for the Greig collection when Rangers won the league for a second successive season and collected the League Cup in the 5-0 win over Morton. Only Dundee stood in the way of a Rangers treble in the Scottish Cup final, and one man in particular.
Bert Slater was the goalkeeper for Dundee, and he nearly broke our hearts. I mean, he had some miraculous saves that day. I mean, we didn't think we were ever going to get the ball by him.
Right up Greig. Henderson. If Henderson doesn't let Cox come in hard, it's difficult to stop. McLean is onside this time. And a wonderful save by Slater from Brand. Through to McLean. They're all getting in each other's road. And that's quite unbelievable. On to Stewart. Watch how Greig goes after Golzin. Right up Greig. On to Henderson. McLean. Well, he's got lots of room to move in. Could go right in. Oh. 20 minutes to go as Henderson takes his corner kick. Miller, and a goal! Goal by Miller. Poor Slater, after performing all these heroics, a picture of dejection. And here's Cameron's off. I've said he's offside. And it's a goal! A beautiful goal by Cameron. Troven. Well, what a sensational minute that was. There's Wilson. It's Henderson on the left wing. It's a goal, yes, and Miller has scored. I thought the ball was going over the bar. And Henderson on to Brand, with Henderson taking it. It's Henderson on to Brand, on to Wilson. There's going to be another one. Yes, it's a top one.
Rangers had won the treble. John Greig was to win another 2 in the 70s and remains the only player in Scottish football history to win a triple treble. Typically, he feels that it should have been more.
At the start of every season, right for the start of my career, right to the end, because I played for Rangers Football Club, I expected to win the treble. If we're playing in Europe, I expected to win that European Cup as well, because we were the Rangers.
Here's Greig coming in, on to Brand. Greig again, it's a goal, and that makes it 3. 15 minutes gone, Henderson taking his free kick, and Brand trying to poke it in, and Miller has scored. Wilson. Beautiful goal by Wilson. Greig on to Forrest. Henderson of Rangers. And a goal! Goal by Henderson.
Rangers went on to make it 4 trophies in a row when they began the 64-65 season by retaining the League Cup, beating Celtic 2-1 in front of 91,000 at Hampden.
Kennedy, Greig, Greig is really mopping up what Celtic have managed to put on his way so far. Johnston. Tobin. Gemmell gives it a sort of bacular. Forrest. Murdoch. Out jumping Wood. Chalmers. Murdoch. Kennedy. Baxter. Kushner retreating. Forrest.
Those were happy times at Ibrox, and the fans certainly enjoyed the glory days. But Rangers' virtually uninterrupted run of success was about to come to an end.
That team broke up, and Scott Simon had to rebuild another team. Now, he had three of us left. He had Ronnie McKinnon, and Ronnie was a great centre-half. Willie Henderson and myself. And we had to rebuild that side. The unfortunate thing from Rangers' point of view at that particular time was that at that stage of rebuilding, Celtic came on the scene with their really good side that won the League Championship 9 times in a row. And if these guys in here don't get to 10, I'll never let them forget it, because I'm waiting for that day coming. We could beat Celtic. We beat them often enough, but we could never beat them in the games that counted that would win us the League Championship. If I had followed the same trend as others before me, I could have went to England. But I had never any wish to leave here. And it was hard during the Celtic days, but I think a lot of the supporters respected the fact that the other two lads and myself, in particular, stayed and saw it through.
Greig collected his third Scottish Cup winners' medal in the 1966 final, won after a replay, once again, against Celtic.
Side forward Johnston. And it's Simpson. But almost halfway through the second half. Still no scoring. Then have Greig. Certainly Celtic go deep in defence. Chalmers to Hughes. When he gets going, he's difficult to stop. And there's his shot. Ball's out. Well, according to Mr. Wharton, it was out. Inside forward Johnston. Well, I don't know how McLean missed that one. And somebody's foot stopped that one. And there's a goal by Johansson. Oh, there it is. Johansson, the first Danish player ever to appear in a cup final. And he is celebrated by scoring the first goal.
Greig's consistency for both Rangers and Scotland, for by now he was an established internationalist, was rewarded with the Player of the Year award in 1966. He was also a natural choice as club captain.
I really was 100% sure that John was going to take over as captain of Rangers, because even in the stages, as I say, when he wasn't captain of Rangers, he was still a leader. He had this charisma that he was John Greig, and he would lead people and tell people what to do.
John had a difficult time when he first became captain, in the sense that was the era where Celtic were on a crest. They had done their 9 in a row, so he was, if you like, captain of a Rangers team that were second best at that time. And one of the things that did shine through was his leadership qualities, his will to win, try to drive people forward. For me as well, and a lot of the youngsters, he would have time to come and talk to you and tell you things, particularly when I first came into the first team, which was really 66, 67. He helped me a lot, told me wee things, showed me what to do, and basically he was a good professional, really good professional.
He was a real father figure to them all, and that respect was mirrored by a lot of the senior players. I mean, for instance, I would say I was quite a strong character, personality-wise, and that as a player. And my total respect. I loved him. I loved him as a player. I loved to play with him. You're glad to have him on your side.
Greig played in every match during Rangers' run to the final of the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1966-67, even calling correctly when the tie with Real Zaragoza was decided on the toss of a coin. Before that, Rangers had knocked out the holders of the trophy, Borussia Dortmund.
Johansson, Rangers surging the pressure on, trying to get an early goal. Watson tackled there by Trimho. The tackle by Greig on Held. Wonderful goal by Johansson. Neuberger, who tumbles down there as Greig tackles him. Henderson. Alex Smith. Greig. It's held. Tackled by Greig, good tackle. Watson. Smith. Johnston jumping over the ball and dummying the Borussia defence is fouled. Forrest. Smith. Johnston. Smith leaping up. Big goal by Alex Smith.
The final was played in Nuremberg against West German opponents in Bayern Munich, whose side included great names like Sepp Maier, Gerd Müller and Franz Beckenbauer. Rangers were desperate to emulate Celtic's European win just 7 days earlier, but Scott Simon fielded a surprisingly negative lineup, packed with midfielders and without a recognised striker. It was a poor game, goalless after 90 minutes.
Johnson. Beckenbauer. Oh, great chance for Smith. That was one that popped up there out of the blue for Alex Smith. Johnston. Hine. Smith. Hine did. Oh, great save by Maier. Oh, a brilliant save.
And unfortunately for us, we played in Nuremberg against a German team, Bayern Munich, in the final. So it was like a home game for them. It took them to extra time to beat us.
Olhauser showed Munich are just waiting for the moment when they can throw Beckenbauer through. Roti scored!
I walked into the dressing room that night at the end of the match, and it was a huge square concrete room. Huge place. No feeling about it or anything. Not like this here. And I just took this box with this Winners' Cup runners-up medal. I had no time for runners-up medals. And I slung it at every wall. I went and had a bath. We got in the bus to go back to the hotel. And me, Joe Craven, who'd been the second team trainer in my early days, says to me, "Listen, son," and he handed me this wee box, and it was all burst and tattered by hitting the wall. He says, "You may want to show that to your family sometime later in your life. Put it in your pocket." I'm glad he did that, because sometimes you've got to know what it is to take a defeat to make sure that you win the next time. Maybe that was the start of the downfall of Scott Simon. I didn't blame him, it's our fault. We're the guys in the park. We didn't do the job. And he came back here to the ground here for a board meeting. And he got sacked and we're at the top of the league. When I picked up the paper the next morning coming through to train, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. It absolutely shattered him. He eventually went to Partick Thistle as the general manager. But I was very, very sad to see him gone.
John Greig won 44 caps for Scotland, many of them as captain. Naturally, he gave the same 100% commitment to his country that he gave to his club. It was an era when players quite genuinely played for the jersey and took enormous pride in representing their country.
I don't think anybody who plays any sport can have more satisfaction than representing your country. And it didn't matter to me what you got paid. I mean, I've still got them international jerseys, and they mean more to me than anything.
I was always very, very comfortable when John Greig was in the Scottish team. Number one for his great passion he had to play for Scotland. Number two, because he had this great passion just to play football, John Greig, you know, and this will to win and desire to win and desire to give off his best, even if you were 5-0 down, still keep going all the time.
He was like Billy, you know, he was a guy that got about and come on, you've got your job to do, you've got to do this, and on the field, great, you know, if you want to do it, they were up shouting and bawling at you, and great. I mean, you need guys like that, you really definitely need guys like that. He was a really good captain.
Greig won his first cap in 1964 against England at Hampden. He was just 21. The Scotland manager at the time had known John since he first came to Rangers.
The first day I walked in this club to be a full-time football player, we were training down at Benburb Juniors pitch, and I had to do the warm-up with a ball and everything with Ian McCall, a famous player for Rangers for the past. And Ian was to become the Scottish team manager, and in fact it was Ian that gave me my first cap. And that was a marvellous occasion, 100,000 people. And we beat England 1-0. And that was the start of my international career.
In 1965, Italy came to Hampden for a World Cup qualifier. Greig was the hero of the hour.
That was a team that was capable of doing well in '66 in the World Cup. I felt Scotland were a very, very strong team at that time. I think I was 21 when I came into the Scottish squad. And I was just sort of getting into the Scottish team at that time. And they were a very, very good side.
I think there was about 125,000 at that game, approximately, Dougie. But the amount of people that says to me they were here at Hampden that night and seen me scoring that goal, I think there must have been about 500,000.
Yeah, I was up behind that goal actually.
Probably that'd be the first time you ever paid to get in here. But yeah, it wasn't one of my greatest goals, but it's probably one of the most important goals and one that gave a lot of people a lot of enjoyment, but it also gave them a lot of hope.
Well, I make it 2 minutes to go and there's still no scoring. Bremner. Greig, he's never been out of your picture in the last 10 minutes. Baxter. Let's go! A goal for Greig! 2 minutes to go!
Jock Steen picked me up play right back, and my instructions was to overlap and get down the park as often as possible. And I started away back at the halfway line there, and I got the ball, and of course I looked for my old buddy Jim Baxter, and as I came through I played it to him, and he was about the centre of the field there, and I just continued my run, and of course Jim just put the ball in a sixpence for me and rolled it along here, and I didn't have time to think about it, so I just hit it for about this angle here, and it went in that near corner of the goals there.
A famous Scottish victory, but it was all to no avail. Scotland lost the return in Naples to miss out on the '66 World Cup finals.
We didn't qualify, but Brazil had, and a lot of people remember it as the World Cup that Pelé got kicked off the park. So he came here for a warm-up, and we played Brazil here in a warm-up game for them for the World Cup, and we drew 1-1. I've got a Brazilian jersey, Dougie, but I've no idea who it is because they were all wanting to change me. They must have heard about my goal against Italy because they all wanted to change me my jersey.
In 1967, Greig captained the Scotland team who took on England, the world champions, at Wembley, in a match no Scot will ever forget.
I remember walking up that big long tunnel at Wembley, and I remember walking up, my brothers were at the game, and I thought to myself, God, after all these years, watching him going away to the Wembley weekend, here I am, captain of Scotland, leading the team out at Wembley.
We knew our dads and our mums and our uncles were all on the terrace and all that, like everybody else, because we had been there ourselves, we had done it. every one of them would have given their right arms to be where you were out in that football park, you know. So all we tried to do, we knew that they couldn't achieve that. A lot of them couldn't achieve that. So we thought, well, we can't achieve that, so we'll do our best for you when we're out there, you know.
Bobby Charlton. Hurst. Good ball. Martin Peters in the middle. Greaves is looking for space. Good, strong tackle by John Greig.
I played that game basically just try to do things simply, and I let Jimmy Baxter and Dennis and that do everything else.
Now, big Jim Baxter of Sunderland setting Bremner through. Bremner still there with it. Now Law. McCready calling for it. McCready gets it. Charlton under this one. Oh, McCalliog now. Lennox. Gemmell coming in. This looks dangerous for Scotland again. Virtually short of getting his head to Gemmell's cross ball. This is number 6, Jim Baxter. And a chance here for... This is Martin Peters. Nobby Stiles. And John Greig gets a big roar from the Scottish supporters here at Wembley as he cut down the efforts of Nobby Stiles to get the ball across. But Nobby now. Charlton. Baxter. This is Peters for England. Baxter may have difficulty now. Finds Greig. McCready. McCalliog. Lennox. Scotland moving forward. Watch out for Lennox's shot. Bobby Charlton. 2 men going for him. Bremner misses him and Charlton's on his own. The sort of position he scored against Mexico. Jimmy Greaves now. The chances he really takes. And he hit Simpson.
Ronnie Simpson, I said to him, I says, is there anything you want me to do in that during the game? He says, well, look, he says, I'm not too clever at these cross balls because of my height. He says, if I come out, he says, you guard the goals. So I says, fine.
Bobby Moore. Peters. Charlton! Off the line! John Greig. John Greig, number 4, there he is, the Scottish skipper, and he certainly saved Scotland then. Now it's Tommy Gemmell for Scotland. Moore gets his head in the way, and Gemmell has it again. And a chance here!
Scotland played great that day. I mean, it was 3-2 going on 5 or 6-2. And Jimmy and Dennis know when playing, we might have beaten them 6-2. I know they're great players and wonderful players, but they didn't want to just take the mickey that day with some of the rest of the lads who just wanted to try and get the ball in the net as often as they could.
I was more intent to out of that match, and Wee Bremner was the same as me, and Big Tam Gemmell was the same as me. If we had really went for it, we could have won easily, much more. I mean, 3-2 didn't reflect the score at all.
Baxter again. Baxter has come in and out of this game, always been dangerous. Tommy Gemmell. Scotland slowing it down. Taking the mickey out of this England side. Lennox, number 11. Jim McCalliog. Oh, McCalliog!
We maybe only won 3-2, but it was the way we beat them that day that gave us satisfaction. Because England are a really good team. And being Scotland, and being the big tartan army, and having beaten England, the world champions, we unofficially crowned ourselves the world champions, to be probably played at Hampden about 3 months later and lost to Botswana or something.
Back with Rangers, Greig missed the 1970 League Cup final against Celtic through injury, but his influence was still enormous.
We possibly lost that game in the dressing room because they came in at half-2 or so and said that John Greig was out of the team. We'd heard they may be out of the team, but when they came in and said that, we'd get a real lift, and we thought, oh, Greggy's not playing, we should really go and do the Rangers today. And it didn't work out that way. I think maybe we just, for once in our life, thought, we've got a right chance here. We didn't approach the game, and actually maybe we should have, only because John Greig wasn't playing. Right in that, big man, eh?
Yeah, it definitely took the edge off us that day. I think we felt, to be honest with you, we went there to win in any event.
That's right.
And we felt we were going to win. And then when we got there and we found out that Greggy wasn't playing, I think we just assumed that all we had to do was go in the park.
Win the
And
game.
the edge was off us, and then that big dump on Derek Johnson had to go and score. Eh?
Stupid.
Derek Johnston was a towering 16-year-old from Dundee who had played only a handful of matches when he carved himself a place in Rangers history by heading the cup-winning goal from Willie Johnston's cross. Yet none of the Rangers fans who celebrated that afternoon could have known that the blackest day in the club's history was just 3 months away.
That was one of the worst days of my life, and I hope to God it never ever happens again. I came out the bath and the dressing room was empty. Most of the guys had left, and I was just at the back of me here, and I was standing up there putting my shirt on, and 2 guys came in with a stretcher with a body on it. And in those days we used to have 2 massage tables sat in the dressing room, and they put this body on the table. And I says, what on earth's happened? And the guy says, oh, there's been a disaster outside. He says, there's been a big accident. So I says, is it bad? He says, well, I think there's a lot of people died. So by the time I got my trousers and shoes and socks on, there'd quite a few bodies in here. So I walked out the way I would go when I was leading the team out just an hour and a half earlier, and walked down the tunnel, and by this time, along the touchline just in front of the main stand here, they had a lot of bodies. It was like watching one of the wars with the blankets over them. And I could see the commotion across at exit 13. And I found out, of course, that the barriers had all collapsed. We were all called into the dressing room a few days later, and Willie Waddle insisted that we attended every one of the 66 funerals. Out of all the team, we attended, as far as I'm led to believe, all the funerals of all the unfortunate people that died. And I hope to God that never happens again.
It had been 13 years since John Greig first stepped off the Edinburgh train and made his way to Ibrox. The tiny, wide-eyed youngster had grown into one of the giants of the game, captain of club and country, respected and admired throughout the world. But there was still more, much more to come, of the John Greig story. And that brings us to the end of the first part of Legend, the John Greig story. Part 2 begins here in Barcelona, which of course for Rangers fans means only one thing, the never-to-be-forgotten events of 1972.
by Johnston with a chance, and it's a goal. It's a goal by Johnston. A tremendous victory for them, the first time in many, many years of fighting. They've got a European trophy, the European Cup Winners' Cup.